in a national crisis. We are in a state declared crisis as well as one that is locally affecting us. The most important message I want to share to all of you all is that you are not alone. It can feel very alienating, right? That we are at home, some of us at home with our children trying to take school and classwork, and the business world as we knew it is radically different over these last 3 weeks. But please know that we are here for you, both your Chamber of Commerce as well as our economic and community development partners. We meet every single day, every day for the last 3 weeks, those partners to talk about how to help you and how to help our local economy. And I want to say a special thank you to the organizations that are helping organize this today. That is your Hillsborough Chamber of Commerce, your Chatham Chamber of Commerce, the Carrboro Business Alliance, Chatham County Economic Development, Orange County Economic Development, Chapel Hill Economic Development, Carrboro's Economic Development, Hillsborough's Economic Development, our Orange County Visitors Bureau, our friends at the university that launched Chapel Hill, and the Small Business Technology Development Center. You'll hear them referred to as the SBTDC. It is a branch of the university whose job it is to help small businesses in our community thrive. We also have a few chamber partners from around the region. Our friends at Triangle East Chamber of Commerce, the Sanford Area Business Alliance down south from us, and to our west, the Alamance Chamber of Commerce. We're grateful to have them on the call. I want to remind everybody we are in this for the long haul. We are at the beginning of this crisis. We're not at the middle and we're not at the end. We are at the beginning. And it stretches out in front of us a good ways. And these last 3 weeks, we have done our crisis response, right? Everybody's adrenaline at top level, moving as quickly as we can. And we are all going to have to settle in a bit and adjust to what is ahead of us and to be as successful in this crisis as possible. Let me say a word about that. Our health professionals are telling us that we are doing a good job. We are flattening the curve. We are reducing the amount of spread of this virus. That is the good news. That is saving people's lives. The bad news is that it is extending out the peak. The peak is moving further out into our calendar. When we thought the peak infection was going to be mid to late April, that is why your stay-at-home orders are through the end of April and school is out through mid-May. But because we have slowed the spread, we have pushed the peak away. And the peak is now not expected by some estimates until mid to late May, possibly into June. So it is my expectation that we will be under stay-at-home orders for longer than the current orders are in effect. And we need to be preparing for that. Let me ask everybody to be also patient. This is just on Friday, this law was passed. Normally it's 60 days to implement a new law with a comment period. They are doing it in 4 days. 2 million millions, right? $2 trillion. We're going to try to flow into our market. And some of you are already expressing frustration that your bank is not ready with that documentation. But guess what? They just learned about it 3 days ago, the details as well. So please asking everybody to be patient. It has felt like what we're going to do is hold our breath, right? This is a crisis. We're going to hold our breath as long as we can, underwater, and then pop back up into the world as we knew it. But that is not what we think will happen. We're going to pop back up into a very different world, and we cannot just stay underwater and prepare for it. We need to adapt and innovate and persist and persevere. So you please do not spend this time in a holding pattern. Spend this time planning and thinking about how you are going to do things differently. It feels to me a little bit like a Rocky movie. If you've seen one, the fight scene always goes like this. Rocky gets pounded on for a really long time, and then finally it's his turn. So you are taking, the fight is being taken to us at the moment, right? This is the getting our butts kicked phase of all of these new rules and orders and declining economy, but very soon it will be our turn to do the fighting. So today, again, we're going to talk about some SBA lending. We're going to be careful with our language. We cannot just call it SBA loans. We're going to have to be, let's all really be specific. There's a thing called the EIDL loan, the Economic Injury and Disaster Loan. There are 7A loans. We won't be talking much about those today, though if you have a 7A loan with the SBA, please call your bank and ask for the deferral. They are extending those out 90 days to 120 days. We'll be talking about the PPP and the CARES Act. Finally, before I introduce our speaker, a word again about patience. If you have done the EIDL loan, if you've been back, the website right now is on the 3rd version in 15 days. So 15 days ago, you saw something different. Then briefly, there was a middle version, and now there's an entirely different version. The PPP, if you read about it yesterday, it changed last night. This morning, the rules are slightly different, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. I want the caveat, as we explain this to you today, is how it is today, but we have to pay close attention to it. The last patience I'll ask of you is to be patient with your banker. Your banker right now is a little bit like a Kmart clerk on Black Friday. Those those videos we used to see where everybody's out front pressing on the glass, and we got to figure out which of them is going to unlock the door when all of us just come swamping in on them. They're doing their best to figure this out over these last few days. We pressing against the glass, trying to get at them. Please be as patient as you can. Best thing you can do when you see your banker is to be prepared. Please be prepared. Let's not be the person at the front counter at a restaurant who asks the clerk what's on the menu. You need to read the menu in advance. You need to get prepared before you call them. Their websites are now posting today the specific information you'll need in order to engage in this. So with that, let's introduce our speaker. I hope some of that is helpful information. We are grateful for your membership in our chamber. You have hired us. We work for you. We want you to have high expectations of our team during this time and to reach out to us and let us know what we can be doing to serve and support y'all. Patrick is not new to us. He spoke with us just, I think it was 11 days ago. Gave an incredible presentation. You all watched the video. We got a slide deck. The slide deck had more than 3,000 views, and all the things on the slide deck are different. So what was the case back then on these applications is not the case today. So we're glad that you're here. And Patrick, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself, please, and to take us through an update.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Aaron. Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, we have a completely new slide deck. Like Aaron mentioned, we have new programs that were now even signed into law last time we talked. As of this past Friday, 7 days ago, the president signed the CARES Act and created a couple of new programs that the SBA has now new tools in its toolbox to help small businesses and nonprofits weather the storm, and I'll be talking about those. And I will kick it off talking about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, which is kind of like the workhorse for SBA and has been around for a long time, and people probably know that loan program already. So I just wanted to say thank you for your time, and looking forward to going over this. And by the end, hopefully everybody will understand the 5 different programs available, how to apply, and how they can help your business over the next 6 to 9 months. So the first one, like I mentioned just a second ago, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan is the one we've talked about many times before. You probably know that one as a disaster loan in times of hurricanes and earthquakes and forest fires. The Emergency Economic Injury Grant is the new piece of that puzzle that comes directly from the SBA, and it's on the same application as the disaster loan. So those two are kind of bundled together very tightly, and we'll talk about those two together. The Express Bridge Loan, which is a product that's been around many years, but is now, I think, being a little bit eclipsed by the PPP and by the grant, but that is available as well. And then the last two we'll talk about is the Paycheck Protection Program, which has loan forgiveness, and the Small Business Debt Relief, which is for existing SBA 7A loan holders. So as we know, if you were a watcher of the President's daily briefings, the Administrator Jovita Carranza was on there yesterday talking about the PPP and our programs that are being rolled out throughout the country today. We are literally flying and building the plane at the same time. And it's been a testament to the folks at the SBA headquarters who wrote the rules in record time and got them to the lenders yesterday at 4 p.m. to help launch this program today. And so congratulations to them. They were working literally 24 hours a day for the last 7 days. So going back to the economic injury disaster loan, these are loans that are made directly from the SBA to small businesses, small agricultural cooperatives, small aquacultural businesses, and most importantly, private nonprofit organizations, which is a little bit different than normal SBA lending. Normally, conventional loans we're not allowed to lend to nonprofits, but during times of disaster that opens up and we're able to lend to nonprofits through the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Because of the wide range of effects this has had on our economy, I'm pretty much assuming that all businesses have been affected in some way, shape, or form since January 31st, when the disaster was declared. And the disaster declaration lasts from that time until December 18th, 2020. So if any time during that window you have any kind of economic injury, you can apply for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan and be put into that program and apply. So it's open and for the rest of the year. So who can apply? So what kind of folks are eligible? So we're not really concerned about your credit score. There's no minimum credit score that a business owner must have to qualify. Like we said earlier, it's coming directly from the U.S. Treasury, not from a bank. So the collateral requirements that a lot of folks see with traditional loans, like 1-to-1 collateral or a ratio of that, do not really apply. We're concerned about your pre-crisis cash flow and what that was in 2019. And then we want to see what your schedule of liabilities are currently to help come up with a number that's going to keep your business in operations for the next 6 to 9 months. So the SBA is going to offer you an amount that they think will keep your business up and running and will be able to sustain your business operations. So you won't necessarily be putting in a number for your loan amount. The SBA is going to do a calculation and come up with a number for you. Let's see, so how big are these loans? So they can go up to $2 million per entity. So if you're a serial entrepreneur, you have a restaurant, a daycare, and a beauty salon or something, you could apply for all 3 businesses as long as they're under separate LLCs. So per business entity, per sole proprietor, up to $2 million. The terms are 30 years, so up to 30 years, I should say, which means that they are going to be looking at your ability to repay. And if the loan amount is toward the smaller sum, they may term it out at 15, 20, 25 years. The minimum the SBA will take for a loan payment per month is $50. So they want to keep that debt burden as minimal as possible for you to recover and go back to normal operations. The interest rate for small businesses is 3.75, and for nonprofits, the interest rate is 2.75. So these funds can be used for fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills that could have been paid had the disaster not occurred. So now that this new payroll protection program is out there, I would assume that payroll would not be your first choice for taking out this loan, because you would have an option to get a forgivable loan through the PPP. But we don't know how long this is going to last, as Aaron said. So maybe the thinking is get in the queue. We're encouraging everybody to apply, have those funds there offered to you, and in 8 weeks, when that payroll PPP program kind of runs its course, if there's other funds needed, you'll have that economic injury disaster loan on offer, and you could use those funds for the next 2 months or whatever, however long it's going to take. It's not intended to replace lost profits. So if there was a big event you had scheduled in May and you were expecting $50,000, you're not going to be able to put that $50,000 loss on your application. But if you had similar events in 18 or 19, those revenues would show up and they would enter into the calculation as far as what you were going to be getting. So I'm going to pivot just a little bit. So pivoting over to the economic injury grant, which is separate from the loan, but it is on the same application as the loan. So as a small business owner, you may have immediate cash flow needs. You can go to the portal, sign up for the loan, and one of the last screens you're going to see is, do you want a $10,000 advance? That is the grant that we're talking about right now. You would select yes, or check that box, and you would automatically be granted that economic injury grant, regardless of whether your loan application is accepted or denied. And that grant does not have to be repaid. So it is money going out the door to small businesses, and it would almost be, like I say, malpractice not to go in there and sign up and use those funds for folks that are needing cash and capital in their businesses currently. The other mention on that is if you went in and applied for the disaster loan prior to Monday, when this was signed into law, you had no idea this was even going to exist. How should you approach that? I would say, and we're SBA's directing folks, that everyone should just go back into the portal and just apply for the injury grant by itself through the portal. And that will not affect your loan application that you've already submitted. So there'll be two applications in the system, one for your grant, one for your loan, and they'll both go through independent of one another, and they won't affect the approval of either. So as a small business, you can imagine the wide scope of businesses that are being affected. Restaurants, retailers are being hit really hard. Hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts, all these would be eligible for small business assistance through the EIDL loan. Owners of rental property are even included in that list. So if you own property and your tenants are not able to pay, then you could apply for the EIDL loan as a landlord. The last piece on the slide says you must have a physical presence. That is kind of like a holdover from other disasters, be it a hurricane where it maybe hit North Carolina but didn't affect Virginia. We want to make sure that the folks that are actually affected get the loans. So in this case, all 50 states are declared through the disaster declaration for COVID-19. So it wouldn't matter in the United States where you're located, you would qualify. And that goes for home-based businesses as well. So if you're a home-based business, an online business, a sole proprietor, you would be eligible for an EIDL loan and a grant. Okay, so just going to kind of recap. These loans, these EIDL loans, come directly from the U.S. Treasury through the SBA. You'll be going to that website listed above, covid19relief.sba.gov, to apply. There's no cost to apply, no obligation to accept the funds when they're offered, and for under $25,000, there's no collateral required. For loans over $25,000, SBA is going to ask you for your business assets to list them. It's going to ask you to list any personal assets, and if they need those collaterals to make that loan, they will call you and talk to you during the closing period and have that discussion with you. If you have an existing disaster loan, you can still take out another one. There's no cap for those on the coast that are being affected by hurricanes and such. That would apply probably to them. And then if you maxed out your SBA normal loan, let's say 5 million, you could also take a disaster loan. That would not affect your ability to take out a disaster loan. So here are some screenshots of the screen. And Aaron, I know you've seen this before. This is a streamlined version. It's gonna ask if you're a small business. It's gonna ask if you're, it's gonna say, are you not engaged in any illegal activity? You'll be selecting that. You're the 51% owner, and that'll take you to the next screen. Those are the broad eligibility requirements here that we're talking about. It's going to ask for your business legal name, your EIN if you're a corporate entity or partnership or LLC, your social security number if you're a sole proprietor, and it'll ask if you're a nonprofit, a franchise, and it's going to ask for some revenue numbers and financial numbers there. The next screen, which is under the business owner information screen, will ask you the name of the owner, percentage of ownership, and it'll ask you to list everyone with 20% more of ownership stake in the company. So we're kind of recommending that people list all owners to make that equal 100. But if there's some small partners out there that don't go over the 20% threshold, it'll be up to you to list them if you want to or not. But we are kind of telling and kind of suggesting to folks that they should make that number equal 100 when they fill out that business owner piece. So on the nonprofit side of the house, so we're talking nursing homes, daycares, senior citizen centers, educational facilities, chambers of commerce, anything you can imagine that falls under the 501c, D, or E of the IRS. So that's a broad scope of private nonprofits. Or if you have information from the state saying you're a non-revenue producing organization, you could also use that as your eligibility as a nonprofit. Okay. How are you going to apply? Like I said earlier, you're going to go to that covidrelief.sba.gov application, apply online. And if you have any questions, please call the 1-800 number, 659-2955, or you can email the disaster customer service at sba.gov for questions. We have both the East and the West Coast Processing Center for the disaster office, and we have a FEMA folks that are over there to help you distribute your loan and answer calls. Okay, so if you call and let's say you're like number 500 or something on that call line, don't be discouraged, because like I said, FEMA has like 500 plus people tasked over to us to answer the phone and help with the loan processing. Okay, so right here, I'm going to kind of pivot to some other programs. Aaron, did you want me to kind of wrap this up, or do you want me to take questions now, or?
Would you just offer, please, to the question of nonprofits filling out part 3 of the EIDL, what are they to put where it asks for a who the owner is and the owner's social security?
Could you say that again? I didn't catch the last part.
Sure. Our nonprofit community has asked, they know they can apply. On the 3rd section, it asks to put in the owner's name, the owner's social security number, and the owner's birthday.
Yeah.
Do you have advice on how to fill out that section for them?
I will double check on that. I know that you're not necessarily the owner if you're an executive director. So I'll have to double check on that. I mean, ideally with the old application, what did they say? What did they tell you? Or what kind of feedback have you heard on that piece?
So when we called the national headquarters to ask this question, we're hoping for guidance soon. but they've advised to just get through it. So when it says first name, you can write, we are a nonprofit without an owner. When it says second name, last name, we're a nonprofit without an owner. Under social security number, we could do the EIN for the nonprofit. Under birthday, we could do the organization. But you can't go past it unless you fill that out in some way. So the advice we have is to simply get through it, put some things in there, and that they will call and follow up for more information.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think they streamlined it so much that they've kind of left some gaps in the application. And so we know that folks are going to be calling you, loan officers will be calling the applicants to get any additional information if they need it. And there's also a closing agent involved that will be calling you. So you may get a call from two people. You may get a call at the very end from the closing agent. Just kind of keep your phone close, answer your phone calls in case it's one of the closing agents calling for information. And also we'd say be monitoring your email and spam folders too, just in case.
The last piece on that before you move on, we've also been told, some of you may think, well, you don't put in how much you want. There's not a question there about that. Yeah. You don't put in your assets that Patrick was describing. Those asset lists are not there. That will come later. You're going to fill this out and submit it. Then they will call and follow up with you later and asks you a series of questions to prepare for a loan. It's a closing. You're going to have to do a loan closing. They'll make it simple, but later they will follow up with you on that. Just get the application in right now is one of the most important things.
Right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for mentioning all those different pieces. That's really important. Okay, so I'm going to segue over to the Express Bridge Loan Program, which is a existing program that is specifically through SBA Express lenders. And the requirement is that you have to have a relationship with that Express lender already. So it is primarily for existing businesses that have relationships with lenders and are Express lenders. This program is probably, I would say it's being eclipsed a little bit by the PPP and the grant. But one could go to an Express lender and apply for up to $25,000 in bridge loan funding. So if you needed access to capital immediately and you were applying for a disaster loan, that would be a nice segue for small businesses to get that needed influx of capital quickly. But now that the PPP is out and now that the grant is available, you may want to wait till later to maybe utilize this vehicle before the others. These are the two big ones. So I have independent slides on these two programs, but I just wanted to mention that the new program through CARES that came out and is in effect today is a Paycheck Protection Program and the Small Business Debt Relief Program. So those are the two big programs. The first one, the Payroll Protection Program, or the Paycheck Protection Program, is to help keep your employees on payroll for 8 weeks. And the SBA will forgive the portion used for payroll, rent, mortgage interest, and utilities. So that's a really big piece of the puzzle for a lot of small businesses. So this slide talks a little bit about it. It's a lot of stuff on there, but I'll kind of summarize it for you in that it's meant to go out quickly within days. I got some numbers here on my in my email. Let's see here. I think the number as of 1 p.m. today was there was 398 PPP loans submitted, $1.4 billion in the loan packages, and over 400 lenders were participating, and that was as of 1 o'clock day. So within what, 5 hours, that money has already gone out to small businesses and will be processed in the days to come. So it's working. It may be a little bit buggy, but we're looking forward to this, taking off and ramping up next week. So today, if you're a small business and you want to participate, you could download an application on the SBA website, fill it out, and take it to you could take it to a new lender, you could take it to a bank that you're doing business with already, credit union, community bank, regional bank, and nonprofit lenders that are SBA lenders. I sent Aaron a list, and there's about 130 SBA lenders in North Carolina that lend currently. So you could go to any one of those banks and apply for the PPP loan program.
Patrick, may I stop you there for just one moment, please?
Yeah.
This morning, when we are talking with banks, most banks right now are not accepting any new customers. We have found no bank that is accepting a new customer. They're only doing this today. I imagine they'll take new people over time, but today, because of and probably for the next week, because of the inbound coming to them, that they are requiring you to be an existing customer. So my advice to you is start with your current bank first. Patrick will post that full list. Some of our credit unions won't be doing this and some will. Let me also say, what we're hearing also from local banks is do not drive this over to their bank. WRAL told you, print it out, fill it out, and go to the bank. Bank of America, let's just use that for example. This is not a transaction you do through the drive-through. They have put up a web portal. The application that they are using is going through online. Chase launched their online this morning as well. So check your bank first. Many of them have created an online application for you so that you can continue to shelter in place. We did have an experience with a business this morning who tried to drive it over and do it through the drive-through, and that's just not how it's going. So check with your bank. Many will be launching online portals probably shortly. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, keep work safe. So maintain the social distancing and try to incorporate that into your day-to-day business practices. So the main elements of the PPP, right, is that SBA is going to forgive a portion of the loan proceeds used to cover the first 8 weeks of payroll, rent, utilities, and mortgage interest. So that's a huge piece of that loan right there that's going to be forgiven when it's used for those purposes. The other big elements of the loan is that there's no personal guarantee, there's no collateral requirements, there's no SBA fees, and it's all 100% guaranteed from the SBA to the lenders. So there is zero risk almost associated with these loans. And because there's no collateral, no personal guarantees, there's a minimized amount of underwriting. So we're expecting these loans to go out quickly. The SBA specifically in its rulemaking that came out yesterday, and if you're kind of a wonky person and like to read the fine print, the actual interim rule that was on the website, SBA website today, is written very well. It's written in plain English. It gives reasoning behind the rules. It gives scenarios to the businesses. So if you're a business with X amount of employees, some make under 100,000, some make over 100,000, what would be the forgiven portion? If I'm a business and I've taken out a economic injury grant, how you calculate that into your forbearance. So it's very user-friendly for both the lender and the borrower to take a look at. I would recommend anyone thinking about taking out a PPP to read the interim final rule that was released yesterday at 4 p.m. So the program goes up to 10 million, and it's going to be determined by 8 weeks of average payroll plus an additional 25% of that amount. So it could be utilities or mortgage or lease, whatever. But the bulk of it, 75% of that loan must be used towards those payroll and rent and utilities and mortgage costs in order for that full amount to be forgiven. So that's very important. And then the interest rate is 1% on anything that's not forgiven, and it has a term of 2 years. Payments do not begin until 6 months. Interest, that 1% interest will begin accruing the first month, but there will be no payments for those first 6 months. Okay, I'm sure there'll be a bunch of questions on the Q&A after that. And the other big piece of the puzzle that just came out is the debt relief. So if you're a current SBA loan holder, you do not have to pay any principal and interest for a period of 6 months. SBA is going to pay the principal and interest for you. And if you take out a new SBA loan prior to September 27th, SBA will pay the principal and interest for you. So that is an amazing backstop by the federal government coming in for these SBA borrowers to put the full weight of the government behind them and help shore up some of these small businesses. As you know, we work with a lot of community partners. These are the backbone of the folks in the backbone of the SBA that do a lot of the one-on-one mentoring, and we're just so lucky to have them. If you go to the SBA.gov website, type in your zip code, you'll find their offices are all over North Carolina, and you can visit their webpage, sign up for online mentoring. They're doing Zoom face-to-face, they're doing Zoom chats with clients, they're doing phone call, conference calls with clients and walking them through the loan process and figuring out which loan would be a better deal or which grant and which forgiveness portion works best for their individual businesses. So we're very lucky to have these folks providing one-on-one assistance. So with that, I will leave the remaining time for Q&A, and hopefully I can answer some of these questions that are coming out through the chat.
Thank you. Patrick, will you unshare your screen, please? For those of you who are on the call, we're going to get as many of these questions answered as possible, but if you don't get the answer in this hour and 15, I'm going to hang out on this call as long as possible afterwards, and we'll try to address those to you one at a time. Some of your questions are very similar, and there's a whole lot of them. So also, when we finish this, I encourage you all to take a moment. You can either cut and paste that chat, paste it into a Word document, review it yourself, but many people are answering your questions for you in that live chat, but it's very busy. Some folks have said, how come this isn't super easy? And it's not going to be super easy. I mean, some of it feels pretty smooth, but free money is worth the work. Yeah. So it will take some reading on your part to sort of sort through some of these. First one, Patrick, I want to ask you is about the relationship between the EIDL loan and the PPP. The new PPP application says that it is that the person would go in, they have $10,000 a month in salaries. It says figure out 2.5% of it. Multiply that 2.5, so now they're asking for 25,000. But then it says net the EIDL loan.
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah, so there's different. So if you look at that section of the interim rule, it lists about 3 or 4 scenarios. And
I'm going to pull that up for you.
Sure.
Folks, there is, when you go to the Treasury's website, there are 2 fabulous documents, really fabulous documents to explain. Well, you get to see my yo-yo ma. Okay, 1 second. So on disaster assistance for the Treasury, click the big,
okay, go for it, yeah.
Click red banner, and then I found this one here, top line overview. Patrick has given you that.
Yeah.
This one, the borrower information, is wonderful. Very nice, clear explanation, written on an 8th grade level, nice and simple to understand. And then there is, and I love this language. I hope you love it as much as I do. It is an interim final rule. So that's just so fabulous. But in this interim final rule, I encourage you, it's a long document, but they have scenarios that'll tell you exactly what they mean. They're going to be really clear in here. Remember, I told you it's going to take some reading, but here's an example. And they have an example with the outstanding EIDL. So it says your annual payroll is 120, your average monthly then is 10,000. You're eligible, but then you got the $10,000. Now here's what's complicated. I think they mean an EIDL loan, not the EIDL grant. It appears that they're wanting to add this together. Patrick, do you have advice for us on this?
Yes. So if you've taken out an EIDL loan and you've used it for payroll purposes, SBA wants to roll it in to the PPP loan. So in essence, it's giving you kind of a break saying, we know you took this loan out of 10,000 for payroll, and now we come out with this new forgivable piece. We want you to take that 10,000 you took as a loan, and we want you to put it into the PPP and have that be forgiven.
So here's what I'm going to encourage everybody. It's unfortunate that they use the number 10,000 because that is also the same number as the grant.
Right.
In my reading, this is not referring to the grant. This is not referring to that $10,000 cash advance that you should get in 3 days. Right. This is about your EIDL loan. Right. But I'm going to encourage you also, do not get hung up here. You're going to be applying for your PPP well before you know how much EIDL gave you. So don't worry about this. Fill out your forms. When it's time to talk to the banker, they'll work that out about what the total amount is. But very few of you will know what your EIDL loan is. That is going to be weeks away. Yeah. This is just going to be how they'll do some calculations later on how much you are eligible for. Right. So please fill out your PPP.
Aaron, if I may, I've been monitoring the chat line the whole time, and I'd love to encourage us to take a step back for a moment too, because there's 5 different loan and grant programs that you and Patrick have been talking about, and I'm seeing some confusion. People are getting them confused, but which program's which. And so can we step back and have Patrick remind us of the 5 programs available? Which ones do you approach the SBA about versus which ones do you approach a private lender for?
So Patrick, will you go back to that slide at the very beginning when you had the 5 that were up there? Sure. While he's pulling that up, the most important for you all to know is that this EIDL loan, economic injury, is through the SBA. Somebody put in the chat that somebody had called them, a banker had called to sell them this product. That is a fraud. No banker is selling you this product. This is a product you do directly through the Fed. So Patrick, will you hit those 3 again for us?
Thank you. Yeah, and matter of fact, I will update my slide deck to make note of that, which one's coming from SBA. So the economic injury disaster loan is coming through directly through the SBA website and the online application. The economic injury grant is also going through the SBA website and the same disaster loan application. It's just a question that you check at the very end saying you would like a $10,000 advance, and that's the grant that's being offered without any repayment necessary. And then the Express Bridge goes through a third party SBA Express lender, so that's coming from a lender. The Paycheck Protection Program is also coming from a third party lender, and the Small Business Debt Relief is kind of a joint debt relief. So we basically told all the SBA lenders out there that they are not to collect any principal or interest starting March 27th from any borrower with an SBA loan. So if they were to they had gotten a payment April 1st, they're to tell the borrower, do you want us to return that, or do you want us to apply that to your principal balance? So they're not to take any payments from borrowers as of March 27th. The SBA is paying those loans off for them for 6 months.
That's huge. Y'all, yeah, that is
very huge. Very huge.
My advice on having done this economic injury, the EIDL loan, my advice to you on the call, it will take you only 10 minutes. I'd go into it and create a fake one. I just type in just to see, get through the 3 pages, see what it is. Then you can say, okay, let me do it for my own corporation. It is really simple. If you just wanted to fool with it a little to see what it is, you can enter some sort of false information. Don't hit submit, but if you needed to spend sort of 10 minutes of what are we talking about, it's simple to just put in some things in the field so that you can move to page 3, page 4, see what it's about, and then you can go back through it. The whole thing should only take you 25 minutes to get to the end. It's a much simplified form. Katie, what are the questions that you are seeing that we can ask people, that we can ask Patrick?
Great, thank you. Let's see here. As far as the EIDL loan, and maybe actually for all of the above, all 5 types of loans, we got a few questions about churches and their eligibility. And so there's some confusion that churches may not be eligible, but if they're providing secular services to help the community, can that element of their portfolio be something that would be eligible?
Yes. So if like churches that run daycares, churches that run schools, all those would be eligible. And we're really encouraging them to apply. So don't self-screen yourself out. So that's the worst thing. So don't think I heard that I can't apply, therefore you don't apply. Put it into the category of I'm going to apply and I'll let the SBA sort it out for me. So apply, have the SBA loan officer tell you that you're not eligible for some reason, but apply. That also goes for startups. So if I only have 3 months of revenue, how do I prove I have an economic injury? Or if I have 1 month of revenue, let the SBA determine that. Don't self-screen yourself out, just apply and put yourself in the queue versus not applying.
And on the EIDL loan, get to it. This is, action is the antidote to anxiety. This is a thing you can do. Do it, fill it out, submit it.
And that goes for the grant too. So please, like I said, it'd almost be malpractice to not go out and apply for that because that is potential, working capital for a lot of businesses that need it right now.
$10,000, that grant is at the end of the EIDL loan. Again, Patrick said if you applied prior to Monday, you need to go back through and apply again for the grant. Patrick, any advice on how long this process will be? How quickly will they see that $10,000? And how long until a loan officer calls them and closes?
So we've heard, days for we've already heard back from people who have applied that have $10,000 hit their account already. So we're talking days, direct deposited. The disaster loan will come out as a direct deposit. So that'll also be so the disaster loan is more along the lines of 8 to 21 days. The grant is probably days, a couple of days, 3 days. And so that happens very quickly. And then on the payroll protection side, the banks are going to be handling this, but I'll say this, that if you're working with an existing lender, an existing SBA lender, and they're very familiar with SBA lending already, their learning curve is going to be very small, and they should be able to process these loans rather quickly because there's minimal underwriting. And the SBA is saying, basically take at face value what the borrower was telling you and turn that over to the SBA. We're not going to hold you responsible for any information that they may or may not have right, or wrong, So if they are stating something incorrectly, but they're writing it down and they're giving it to you, take that as fact, submit your loan application to the SBA, and we will fund it. We're not holding them responsible for those, for intents and purposes, bad actors. So an applicant will be putting their social security number on the form, and they will be putting their EIN or their EIN on the form. So there's going to be accountability. But those loans should go out rather quickly within days. And if you're working with a lender that's never done an SBA loan before, they are going to have a very steep learning curve to get into the program, because they're going to have to learn how to submit it through our own back end, and it may take a little bit longer for them to ramp up their loan production.
One of our key questions we've been asked over the last week is about many businesses let their people go already. So on the PPP loan is about covering payroll. Let's imagine you're a restaurant, you let 100 people go. You then do this PPP loan, you get it. Then so long as you hire your people back by June 30th and keep them for those 8 weeks, then you would get forgiven what you were given. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The other thing, so y'all, if you hired your people back, and some of you said, we're closed, what would we do with them? And the answer is maybe nothing. You're still allowed to pay them and have this forgiven. So again, if you hire them back by June 30th, you may pay them through these funds and have that forgiven.
Right.
Thing two is, say you borrowed $200,000 to cover your full payroll, but only half of your employees came back. The answer to that question, Patrick, if you'd confirm, is that you would then be forgiven half of that loan.
That's correct.
The rest of it, you'd have to pay them back, or you just give back because you didn't use it for payroll. Make sense?
Right. Exactly. Yes. There's no prepayment penalty. You could give it back to the lender without any prepayment penalty, and that would be just, put back in the hands of the lender, and you wouldn't have to worry about it. And on the economic injury disaster loan, if you were to take out funds and you didn't need it, you could pay back the SBA without any prepayment penalty as well. So both programs there's no prepayment penalty.
There's a question here. The people you hire back do not have to have been your original people. So if you let 100 people go, hired 50 new people back, this would be forgiven for you making the payroll.
That's the way it's written, yes.
So if you did shed employees, you could borrow this money, bring them back, say you can't get them, that's fine. You just give back what you didn't spend on payroll and the portion you spent on payroll.
Right.
Now it says payroll, rent, and some other things. It says that 75% of the forgivable must be payroll, that they are willing to forgive a few other things. Katie, are there other sort of thematic questions that we're seeing in the chat?
Yeah, in the big picture of the 5 different programs you've talked about, Patrick, there's been some questions about, can you apply for multiple channels of funding, right? Can you apply for the EIDL loan and also the PPP loan?
Yes, you can apply for both. If you get the grant will be subtracted from any PPP forgivable portion. But yes, you can apply for both. They're not exclusive. You can apply for both. And we recommend, if you have those in the queue, and have them out there available to you. And so as this rolls out, you'll be doing kind of a calculator, back of the napkin kind of calculation, saying which one's going to get me the most bang for my buck, with the lower interest, how long am I going to have to pay it back? There's businesses out there with not a lot of payroll expenses, but have a lot of cost of good expenses. They may go for the economic injury loan because there's a 30-year term. They may not want that 2-year term on the PPP. So there's different businesses may handle those loan products very differently.
So again, when I said this is going to require reading and thinking, it's not simple. You'll have tough choices, but Patrick and I are both telling you, give yourself the choices by applying for both of them. Also, I want to caution everybody, if you are reading advice that's posted online from your bank, from your professional association, and that advice is older than yesterday, then you are reading bad advice. Many organizations started writing advice after the law was passed, but before the rules were written. So they'll have things like 10-year term on the PPP and 4% interest. Well, that's what they thought it was going to be. Yeah. The Treasury didn't do it that way. They did 1% interests. So if you're getting advice from your professional association or others and that advice, check it. If it's older than Monday, it's not accurate anymore, and that you need to find better, more recent advice.
Yeah.
We're going to go another 15 minutes and then longer than that, y'all. So the formal part of this will keep going with some questions. Patrick, can you stay another 15 with us?
Sure. Yes.
There's a question about when interest begins to accrue. Some of these things you guys will be easy to find online. It'll say, when I showed you that Treasury website, let me just show two websites while Katie is going to give us another question. The two websites that I am finding easy to use stuff. The first one is Treasury. So again, it is the Treasury's main site. Push the button for the bright red. Once you are there, there's going to be very clear. These are very clear and helpful. On the interim final rule, just go a few pages through the junk at the front. There's really good stuff there. On the small business site, really simple. You're going to hit the big button at the top on the yellow, and the application is it'll explain it, and then you'll click and you'll be in the application. And once you're in the application, it's pretty simple to get started. But there's some good reading in both of those about finding the loan. Okay. Katie, any other questions?
Yeah, this one might be fairly easy to answer for Patrick, but at least one person wanted to know, how do you check the status of your application in the SBA system once you've submitted it? Is there a way to check your status?
Yeah, I would refer them back to the 1-800 number. That would be the easiest way to just get a quick reading on your loan. So that would be the let's see. So 1-800-659-2955 number. That would be a good number to call. And you can also drop them an email at disastercustomerservice@sba.gov. But give them so 9 to 21 days. So give it a couple of days. Within a week, you should, if you apply for the grant, you should have that funding hit your bank account within probably 5 days or less, and then a little bit longer for the loan officer to give you a call or send you an email.
Great. Aaron, I've got another one if you'd like.
Yep, ask question, and as you're sorting through, I appreciate you asking the questions you think the most amount of people would want the answers to, and we'll work through the specifics also.
Yep. I'm seeing a lot of questions about unemployment and how that might relate to these programs, particularly the PPP program. And so what we're hearing is that unemployment benefits with the federal supplement on unemployment might make it actually more attractive for some employees to just go ahead and stay furloughed, but that might actually penalize the employer who's trying to secure this PP loan and bring employees back. So any advice on how they should be thinking through this forgiveness calculation, knowing this reality of unemployment versus wages?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's going to be, very interesting how that plays out. There are additional unemployment benefits available. So in the case of you have maybe a low wage worker that is now potentially making more on unemployment, maybe that employer holds off for 2 months and then picks them back up at the end of the 2 months. They're not necessarily losing out on anything if they're not paying the employee, if they're willing to come back after that 2-month period. So the goal is to get people back on payroll now. So in 2 months, when hopefully this has run its course, these businesses are ready to launch and ready to go. They don't have to go back into the workforce and try to find people. They already have them lined up and on staff and trained and ready to roll. So it's going to have to be a kind of a business decision to offer them their jobs back, or if they're furloughed, bring them back on and see what the outcome is.
So let's just talk through this unemployment. I said it'd come up at the end. The maximum benefit in North Carolina is $350 a week. It should be about 60% of your employee's salary. I'll hit the new rules sort of in a moment. But the federal government in the CARES Act said that they would get a $600 supplement on top of your employee's unemployment. So if your employee was making $200 from North Carolina on unemployment and the feds put $600 on top of that per week, they're now making $800 a week, $3,200 a month. That's $36,000 a year. When you call them to come back to you for $14 an hour, they're going to say no, thank you. And this will be a challenge that we may have at the end. To Katie's question, if you borrowed $100,000 through the PPP and then just couldn't get your employees to join you again, you'd give the $100,000 back to the federal government. If you borrowed $100,000, you could get some of your employees to come back, or you needed to raise their wage, then you would pay them that new wage. There's going to be some perverse impacts, some perverse incentives in this system that come around, and there's going to be those tough business decisions that you're going to have to try to make.
Yeah. The other option is for them to hold on to that money and just pay 1% interest over 2 years.
Yep, perfect. That's great. You don't have to spend it on payroll. You just have to spend it on payroll to get it forgiven. You could keep it for other reasons. Go ahead, Katie, and then some people have their hands up also.
Yep, I see some hands up visually as well as through the actual raising hand feature. But I just wanted to give a suggestion that maybe we bring Neil from the SBTDC Center. He is on the line, and he and his colleagues have been tracking the complications of all these programs and offer free and confidential help on your loan application. So I thought it might be good to give him a shout out so people can put a face with a name and know that process.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the introduction, Katie. And this has been extremely informative from my standpoint as I'm seeing all this. So thank you so much, Patrick, for your slides and walking through a lot of these steps and Aaron putting it together. So for those of you who don't know, the SBTDC stands for the Small Business and Technology Development Center. We are sort of under the SBA umbrella, so we receive our funding from the SBA. We're located on 16 UNC system campuses throughout the state. For you guys, I am the regional director of the Chapel Hill location. We're all of our staff at this location. We have business counselors that can provide advice. It does not have to be just about applying for an economic injury disaster loan or the like, but we can help you through business problems. Basically, we are free management consulting for you. Okay, so you can visit sbtdc.org. That is the statewide website, sbtdc.org. Go there. There's the locations tab if you want to share that with others, so to locate the campuses. And on that, you'll find a tab that will say a request for counseling. You can fill that out. I recommend that you do that. And then we will reach out to you and schedule a phone call or a Zoom session, or however it is that you want to communicate, just email even. We can do anything from a 5-minute conversation to a little bit more time. Obviously, we have a lot of inquiries, and our staff hasn't grown exponentially. So please understand also maybe some time restraints. We might have to, an hour or something like that exhibit. But we can answer questions, and if we don't have an answer, we can explore that question for you and get an answer to you. But also, I'll close with this on sbtdc.org. On the main site, there is a Navigating Your Business Through COVID-19 website that we put together. That website, if you click on it, as Aaron we'll do here, or Katie, I'm not sure who's manning the website, but this is designed to be a tool for you to be able to navigate it a little bit. We update it daily. This is not to be a replacement for going directly to the SBA.gov or Department of Commerce, Department of Treasury, that sort of thing, because we're culling information, right? But you can find things here that might be helpful to you. So please take a moment, and I echo what Aaron was saying earlier. This is a time to educate yourselves, to read, to be patient as you digest information. I think it's extremely important that you give yourself that time, because it's going to empower you to make good and smart decisions. Okay.
I'm going to thank you, Neil. My favorite on here is this SBA Emergency Loan Overview Comparison. It looks like this. And for the visual learners for whom this oral was not the best for you, right here, who you borrow it from, clearly says deadlines, comparison, what it can be spent on, etc., etc. Really nice, side by side. They'll have to update this because it just got updated last night at 9 p.m., but is now 1% on non-forgiven. And so those sorts of things, you'll see it all in one place. A very trustworthy resource. It's been posted in the chat feature. Katie, should we call on people here? Let me go. I'm going to stop this share. I can see some hands. Let's hear. Do you have any, was there another key question you want to make sure, Katie, from the group?
Well, a colleague of ours wanted to see what you both had to say of this tension between, you know, trying to calm our nerves and take our time and do these applications with this fear that the money is going to run out quickly and that we need to act fast. Any advice on how to navigate these competing tensions?
Good question. I mean, as I said earlier, so as of 1 o'clock today, there was 4,000 PPP loans submitted, $1.4 billion appropriated out of what, 357, is that right? Billion? Yeah. So it's going to ramp up pretty quickly. So we just don't know how long it's going to last. Is it going to last weeks or months? I would probably say by the end of the month, there's going to be a big chunk of that kind of allocated already. So I don't think you have to get down there at 8 o'clock on Monday, but I think you should probably consider it, you know, by the end of next week, beginning of next week. You should probably consider it if you're on the fence. I would probably apply sooner rather than later.
My advice, I think it's the perfect tension. You should feel both of those things. Feel them both. Take a moment to read, but the reading should not take hours, but it will take, you will actually have to read. So it's beautiful outside. Go outside, turn up towards the sun, feel that on your face. Put your earphones in and do some reading while you walk your neighborhood, and make a choice. On the EIDL, that one, do ASAP. It's not hard. When they call you later, when the banker calls you later for the loan, then you may have your stuff together a little better on what you need. But that one, do now. That one takes almost no thinking. On the PPP, some of you can't do that now. Several banks are not taking these today. Our friends at Truist, as I understand it, has said, we need a little more information. You can't change, we need a little more before we're going to have this available to our people. Chase and Bank of America are open and running with it. Other people, our friends at Pinnacle, are taking them, but they're going to do them more by hand with you. Not an online system, but a turn in of the application. And Fidelity Bank is also available. So remember my analogy at the beginning, you all are all wanting their attention. You'll get much better service if you do some prep work, but get to it. This is, you saw $1 billion out of $350 billion in the first 6 hours. It's going to move pretty quickly. So I would read, but then act.
And Aaron, I would just remind all of our members and friends, it is not a coincidence that the very first day that the EIDL loan was available, we had Patrick from the SBA on a call with hundreds of you. And it's no coincidence that today, the first day that the PPP is available, technically, we have Patrick here. So our hope is that you will be early in line to apply for these resources, and that we want you to be empowered with how to do that.
Let's hit some upraised hands. Anna Richards, I'm gonna unmute you. What was your question, please?
No, I was letting you know that it was me and not a
Okay. Anna, it's wonderful to have you with us. Anna Richards is an amazing, with a career in business and now running our local NAACP. We're glad to have you here. Kay Ruse, I'm going to call on you 1 second. Let me get to Lisa first.
Hi there. Is this me?
Yep, that's you.
Super. I've got 2 questions for you. Number 1, maybe this was answered earlier and I just didn't see it, but I have been seeing that the forgivable part of the payroll loan is mortgage interest, and other times I see it's your mortgage payment. Which one is it? And then number 2 is, if the amount of my loan through the payroll is going to be about the same as the cash, the 10,000 grant, wouldn't it be easier for me to just get that 10,000 and not have to deal with all the verification of the payroll protection? Those are my 2. Thank you.
On the second one, yes. If you only needed that and you didn't want to mess with the other part, take the path of least resistance. With respect to what is forgivable here, it's very specific. I pulled it up for you. This is on the Treasury's website. Great detail is there. This says most mortgage interest, rent, and utility cost. Forgiving your principal you're paying to yourself, essentially. That is, so they're not going to forgive the principal. That's you creating equity. But forgiving your interest or rent, I can see those as expenses. Principal is generally not seen as an expense, but a choice to grow your assets.
Okay.
Does that make
Thank
sense?
You. Yep.
Let me go to, sorry, my interface. Sorry for the back and forth on the share and the not share. Brian Stark, please. Oh, sorry, Kay Ruse. Sorry, just before you, Brian, Kay Ruse with your actual hand up. All right, Kay's going to wait for a second, Mr. Ruse. Let's go to Brian Stark. I've unmuted you.
Hey, how you doing? I appreciate y'all pulling this together. It's really helpful and great information. I've got 2 questions. In filling out the application, and I've gone through the final doc from the Treasury site, so I'm just trying to get some clarification on a couple of things. With the number of jobs on the PPP application, is that the number of full-time employees or does part-time? Because I do see it says full-time equivalents, but there seems to be some gray matter there, so I'm just trying to, or a gray area. I just want to get some clarification so I put the right thing on the application.
Patrick?
Yeah, it says full-time, so I would go by that. So I would stick to what it says there in the final rule, interim final rule.
And then so on the flip side, when we get to the 8 weeks post, then if I've got that same number of full-time employees on there, that would be, any payroll to them would be on the forgivable side. And what about payroll paid to my part-time employees? Would that be able to be on the forgivable side too? Is it all payroll or just to those number of employees that's listed originally?
I'm gonna have to do a little more research on that, but maybe in the next 24 hours. If you could send an email to Aaron, and then I'll look it up, and then I'll reply back to you.
Beautiful.
The document called the interim final rule, Brian, you may have seen it. It really, I think it's promulgated last night, 9 p.m.
Yeah, I read it this morning. So okay. I was literally, I was trying to like just piece the pieces together, and I was on a town hall earlier, and it still wasn't clear. So I thought, I've got Patrick here. I might as well pick his brain.
I'm glad you asked, and I'm sorry it's not yet known.
That's fine. And my second question is, as I'm figuring out the 2019 payroll, am I subtracting? I've heard it 2 ways. Do I subtract out the federal income tax? Because I see that in the final ruling, it says federal income tax for the time period of February 15th, 2020 to June 30,
Mhm.
2020. But when I'm figuring out my average payroll costs based on my 2019, am I pulling out federal income tax, or is that a part of my calculation for my full, for what I'm figuring out my monthly average to be?
That's a good question too, because I've heard that that some lenders are including it. So I got to double check how they're going to be interpreting that rule. But if you read the interim final rule, it does say that that's excluded from the definition of payroll cost, the income taxes. But I've heard that some lenders are potentially including that into their calculations.
So a follow-up question to that then, for employees that are paying over the 100 grand, which I can't count the over 100 grand. Am I then able to back out the federal income tax that's paid on that over 100 grand?
Right. That's a subcategory of the first question, right?
Yes.
Yeah, just send Aaron an email and I will follow up and get you an answer.
Awesome, great. I appreciate that.
Okay.
All of us are gonna stumble into all of these unintended, right? Well, if I can't count all their payroll, can I count all of their payroll tax?
Yeah.
We're uncertain. Let's go with Cruz, it says.
Yes, can you hear me, Aaron?
Yes, we can. What's your question?
Fantastic. Thanks again for the leadership on and giving us some guidance on this today. So a few days ago, I applied for the EIDL through that website, okay? Went ahead with that. And then yesterday, I applied for the PPP, okay? I'm interested in this emergency economic injury grant. Is that portal and information on the EIDL through that process as well that may have been updated that I need to just go back in and do again, or go to the one that, so basically it's on that form, it just wasn't there the first time that I did it a couple days ago, because I can't find anything about that. And
When did you do it?
The
When did you, last week?
SBTDC piece, it talks about these three different things: the economic injury disaster loan, that's what I filled out. Now it talks about that advance,
Yep.
but it's there's nothing in any of these that say grants.
So
I'm a little bit twisted
Patrick
around.
can confirm. We know exactly what you're talking about. It was called an advance in early literature, and in early clickings, it's called it an advance, but they are now clearly calling it a grant.
Okay.
Patrick, is that correct?
Right, right. That's correct.
It's the same 10,000. They were calling it an advance. It now is a grant. And if you applied prior to Monday, it didn't exist in the form for you. And you will need to go back and do that again.
In the same form that I had, or just start another form? Because the form, if I submitted it, it probably is not going to let me do it
Start
again.
another form. Go to the SBA site. It's 3-4 simple steps of
Yep.
filling information out. When you get to the end, you will click the I want the grant. Patrick, that's your advice? Go again.
That's correct. You need to go back to the same portal, the one that's on there right now, and go through the process, and then just click the grant piece, and that will allow you to both be in the pipeline for the grant and in the pipeline for your formally submitted disaster loan. So they won't interfere with each other.
Okay, and then the follow-up question, I'll let you go, and that is the information that I put in there, where can I print that out so I make sure I have accurate information in both forms? Meaning, if I didn't have my correct bank account information, I just got it in and got it submitted on the first one. Now I have my accurate banking information for my business that I want to make sure that that's in there. Or do I just try to print out what I had before and use what I had off of the drop-down menus and all the things just to get it submitted? Any direction on that for consistency of information on the loans?
They're separate from one another, so it wouldn't matter if you had a bank account X and a loan, bank account Y on the grant. They would just go to different bank accounts.
Okay, that's fine. So just do our best as far as consistency on just resubmit it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and use your current accurate, because they're going to directly put money in your account. So use the one now in your EIDL grant formerly referred to as the EIDL Advance.
Yes. Thank
Jennifer
you.
Jackson, hold on, I'm unmuting you. Jennifer, are you still out there?
Yes, I am. I was on mute myself.
Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, Aaron. It's so wonderful to see you. Thank you all for doing this. I have two questions. So one, I did what you advised, and last night I went through the EIDL sort of as a dummy person and went through and found out all of the kinds of questions they'd be asking. And one I noticed is that they set January 31st of 2020 as the disaster date, and asked for revenue and expense and cost of goods sold numbers for the 12 months prior. We're on a calendar year, fiscal year, so I've got at the ready 2019 numbers. Would that suffice, or do I really need to ask our accountants to do February through January 31st?
Patrick, it is odd. It looks like a rolling 12 months. So essentially
Right.
February through January. But if people just put their last year, that's probably good enough.
That would be fine, because they're normal. I mean, you're just kind of off by a month. That would be fine. I don't think that's going to be a deal breaker with the disaster loan.